6 months later, Sarah Martinez stood in the ranch office looking at the computer screen with satisfaction. The filing system she had implemented was working perfectly, customer orders were being processed efficiently, and the Triple W Ranch's direct-to-consumer beef business had grown by 40% since she started working there. Emma, now 9 months old and crawling everywhere, was playing with wooden blocks on a blanket in the corner of the office. She had grown into a happy, healthy baby who charmed everyone she met. The ranch hands called her little boss because she seemed to supervise everything that happened around the property. "Sarah, you've got a call online too," Marcus called from the kitchen. "Someone asking about our premium beef packages." Sarah picked up the phone and handled the inquiry with practiced ease. She had learned everything there was to know about the ranch's operations, from the different cuts of beef they offered to the grass-feeding practices that made their cattle special. What had started as a simple administrative job had evolved into something much more meaningful. After finishing the call, Sarah updated the customer database and checked the day's orders. Business was booming, thanks in large part to the professional website she had helped create and the social media presence she managed for the ranch. Catherine's high-quality beef combined with Sarah's marketing skills had proven to be a winning combination. "Knock knock," Catherine said from the doorway. She was holding a cup of coffee and wearing the smile that had become so familiar and comforting to Sarah. "How are things looking today?" "Really good," Sarah replied, turning the computer screen so Catherine could see the sales figures. "We've got 15 new orders this week, and 3 of them are from restaurants wanting to become regular customers." Catherine whistled appreciatively. "Marcus is going to be thrilled. He was just saying this morning that we might need to expand the herd if business keeps growing like this." Emma looked up from her blocks and held her arms up toward Catherine, babbling happily. Catherine immediately scooped up the baby and spun her around, making Emma giggle with delight. The bond between them had grown stronger every day, and Sarah knew that Emma thought of Catherine as another grandmother. "Actually, I wanted to talk to you about something," Catherine said, settling into the chair across from Sarah's desk with Emma on her lap. "Marcus and I have been discussing the future of the ranch, and we'd like to make you a formal business partner." Sarah stared at Catherine in shock. "What do you mean?" "We mean that you've become essential to this operation," Marcus said, appearing in the doorway with his own cup of coffee. "The business side of things has never run smoother, and, frankly, we can't imagine trying to do this without you anymore." Sarah felt overwhelmed. When she had first arrived at the ranch, she had been hoping to stay for a few weeks at most. Now Marcus and Catherine were talking about making her a permanent part of the business. "I don't understand," Sarah said. "I'm just an employee. I don't have any money to invest or expertise in ranching." "You don't need money," Marcus explained, sitting down in the other chair. "You've already invested something more valuable than cash. You've invested your time, your skills, and your commitment to making this place succeed. That's worth more than any financial contribution." Catherine nodded in agreement. "We're getting older, Sarah. In a few years, we're going to want to step back and let someone else handle the day-to-day operations. Jenny's going to be a wonderful veterinarian, but she's never shown much interest in the business side of ranching. You have." Sarah looked between them, trying to process what they were saying. "Are you offering me a partnership in the ranch?" "A minority partnership to start," Marcus clarified. 20%, with the option to buy more as the business grows. We'd draw up proper legal papers, of course, but the basic idea is that you'd become a partner with a voice in all major decisions. And, when we're ready to retire," Catherine added, "we'd want you to have the first option to buy us out completely. This place needs someone who understands its value and will take care of it the way we have." Emma had fallen asleep in Catherine's arms, completely comfortable and secure. Looking at her daughter, Sarah realized that this offer represented more than just a job or even a business opportunity. It represented the chance to build the kind of stable, secure future she had always dreamed of providing for Emma. "I don't know what to say," Sarah said quietly. "This is incredibly generous, but it's also a huge responsibility. What if I make mistakes? What if I'm not ready for something this big?" "Nobody's ever really ready," Marcus said with a chuckle. Catherine and I weren't ready when we took over from my father, but we learned as we went. The important thing is having the right character and the willingness to work hard. You've already proven you have both." Sarah stood up and walked to the window that looked out over the pastures. She could see cattle grazing peacefully in the distance, and, beyond them, the hills that had become so familiar and dear to her. This place had saved her when she needed it most, and now it was offering her something she had never dared to hope for, a real future. "There's something I need to tell you first," Sarah said, turning back to face Marcus and Catherine. "Before you make any formal offers, you should know that I got divorce papers in the mail yesterday. Jake wants to officially end the marriage." She had been dreading this conversation, worried that her marital status might somehow affect her position at the ranch. But Marcus and Catherine exchanged one of their wordless looks and smiled. "Honey," Catherine said gently, "that doesn't change anything. If anything, it means you're free to make your own choices about the future without having to worry about what anyone else wants. Besides," Marcus added, "we've known for months that you were essentially a single mother. Jake's been out of the picture since before you got here. The legal paperwork doesn't change who you are or what you mean to this ranch." Sarah felt a weight lift from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. The divorce had felt like another failure, another sign that she couldn't make things work. But Marcus and Catherine were helping her see it as freedom instead. "So what do you say?" Catherine asked. "Ready to become a rancher?" Sarah looked around the office that had become her second home, then, at Emma sleeping peacefully in Catherine's arms, and, finally, at the two people who had shown her more kindness than she had ever thought possible. "Yes," she said firmly. "I'd be honored to accept." The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Marcus contacted the ranch's lawyer to draw up partnership agreements, while Catherine began teaching Sarah even more about the operational side of cattle ranching. Sarah moved from the apartment over the barn to a larger cottage on the property that Marcus and Catherine had originally built as a guest house. The cottage was perfect for Sarah and Emma. It had 2 bedrooms, a full kitchen, and a large living area with windows that looked out over the ranch. There was even a small fenced yard where Emma could play safely as she got older. Jenny came home for a long weekend to meet Sarah officially and give her blessing to the partnership arrangement. She was a lovely young woman who clearly adored her parents and was genuinely excited about Sarah joining the family business. "I was so worried about Mom and Dad trying to run everything themselves as they get older," Jenny confided to Sarah as they watched Emma play with the ranch dogs in the yard. "Knowing that you'll be here to help them makes me feel so much better about staying in Austin after I graduate." "Your parents have been incredible to me," Sarah replied. "I hope I can live up to their faith in me." "Are you kidding?" Jenny laughed. "Mom showed me the sales figures from the last 6 months. You've basically doubled their income. Dad's already talking about buying more land and expanding the operation." As autumn arrived, Sarah settled into her new role as a partner in the Triple W Ranch. She worked closely with Marcus to develop 5-year plans for expanding their cattle herd and customer base. She collaborated with Catherine on developing new product lines, including jerky and other processed beef products that could be sold online. Most importantly, she was building the kind of life for Emma that she had always wanted. The little girl was thriving in the ranch environment, surrounded by animals and wide-open spaces. She took her first steps on the wooden floor of the ranch house kitchen, with Marcus and Catherine cheering as loudly as Sarah. On a crisp October evening, Sarah sat on the porch of her cottage watching the sunset while Emma played with her toys nearby. The autumn air carried the scent of hay and wood smoke, and she could hear cattle lowing in the distance. It was the kind of peaceful moment she had never imagined possible during those desperate months when she was struggling to survive. Her phone rang, and she was surprised to see that it was her sister Maria calling from Austin. "How are things going out there in cowboy country?" Maria asked with a laugh. "Better than I ever dreamed," Sarah replied honestly. "Emma's walking now, and she's completely fearless around the animals. Marcus and Catherine treat her like their own granddaughter." "And the business partnership is working out?" Sarah looked around at the property that was now partially hers. "It's incredible, Maria. I'm learning so much, and I feel like I'm actually building something meaningful. Not just for me, but for Emma's future too. I'm so proud of you, Maria said. You've come so far from that scared woman who was trying to get to my house in a thunderstorm. After hanging up, Sarah reflected on how much had changed since that terrible night when her car broke down on Highway 87. She had been running away from one life and had stumbled into something far better than she could have planned. Emma toddled over and climbed onto Sarah's lap, pointing at the horses grazing in the nearby pasture. "Horsey," she said clearly, one of her newest words. "That's right, sweetheart," Sarah said, hugging her daughter close. "Those are our horses on our ranch." The words felt amazing to say. Our horses. Our ranch. After months of having nothing and nowhere to belong, Sarah and Emma finally had a home in the truest sense of the word. Marcus appeared around the corner of the cottage, carrying a bottle of champagne and wearing a huge grin. Catherine was right behind him, practically bouncing with excitement. "What's going on?" Sarah asked, standing up with Emma still in her arms. "We just got off the phone with that fancy restaurant chain in Dallas," Marcus announced. "They want to sign an exclusive contract for our premium beef. It's the biggest deal in the history of the Triple W Ranch." Catherine took Emma from Sarah's arms and spun her around while Marcus popped the champagne cork. "This calls for a celebration," Catherine declared. "Sarah, honey, you've helped us build something really special here." As they toasted their success under the vast Texas sky, Sarah marveled at the journey that had brought her to this moment. A broken-down car and a thunderstorm had seemed like the end of the world just 6 months earlier. Instead, they had been the beginning of everything she had ever wanted. Emma clapped her hands at the sound of the champagne cork, and the ranch dogs came running to investigate the commotion. Soon the whole yard was filled with laughter and celebration, with 3 adults and 1 happy baby surrounded by the animals and land that had become their shared life. "You know what the best part is?" Catherine said as they settled back onto the porch with their champagne. "Emma's going to grow up knowing that this is where she belongs. She'll have roots here, and stability, and people who love her." Sarah nodded, feeling tears of gratitude in her eyes. That was exactly what she had been hoping to give her daughter when she set out for Austin that stormy night. She had found it in the last place she would have expected, thanks to the kindness of strangers who had become family. As the stars began to appear in the darkening sky, Sarah held Emma close and listened to Marcus and Catherine plan their next business expansion. She was no longer just an employee or even a junior partner. She was a full member of the Triple W Ranch family, with a voice in its future and a stake in its success. The thunderstorm that had stranded her on Highway 87 had been the last storm she would have to weather alone. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the support and love of people who had chosen to make her and Emma part of their lives. The little girl who had been born into uncertainty and struggle would grow up surrounded by rolling hills, gentle animals, and adults who adored her. She would learn to ride horses before she learned to drive cars, and she would understand from an early age what it meant to work hard and care for the land. Most importantly, Emma would grow up knowing that she was wanted, loved, and valued. She would never have to wonder if she belonged somewhere, because the Triple W Ranch would always be her home. As Sarah put Emma to bed that night in the cottage that was now their permanent home, she whispered a prayer of gratitude for the storm that had brought them here. Sometimes the worst moments really did lead to the best outcomes, and sometimes strangers really could become family. The Triple W Ranch had saved Sarah Martinez and her baby daughter when they needed it most. Now Sarah was helping to ensure that the ranch would thrive for generations to come, creating a legacy of kindness and hard work that would outlast them all as Sarah woke to the smell of bacon frying and coffee brewing. For a moment, she forgot where she was, expecting to see the cramped apartment where she had been staying with Emma. Instead, bright morning sunlight streamed through yellow curtains, and she could hear Emma cooing happily in the crib beside the bed. The storm had passed during the night, leaving the world outside sparkling clean and fresh. Sarah got up and looked out the window at the vast expanse of the Triple W Ranch in daylight. Rolling hills stretched as far as she could see, dotted with cattle and horses. It was the most beautiful sight she had ever witnessed. Emma was wide awake and smiling when Sarah picked her up. The baby seemed completely at ease in this new environment, as if she somehow knew they were safe here. Sarah changed Emma's diaper and dressed her in a clean outfit from the diaper bag, then ventured out to find her hosts. Catherine was in the kitchen, moving between the stove and a large wooden table with practiced efficiency. She was wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, her graying hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. She looked up with a warm smile when Sarah appeared. "Good morning, honey. I hope you slept well." The storm finally moved on about 3 this morning. "Better than I have in months," Sarah admitted. "Thank you so much for everything. I still can't believe how kind you've been to complete strangers." Catherine waved off the thanks with a dish towel. "Sit down and have some breakfast." Marcus went out early to check on the cattle and survey the storm damage. He should be back soon with a report on the roads. The kitchen was the heart of the ranch house, Sarah realized. It was large and comfortable, with copper pots hanging from hooks, herbs growing on the windowsill, and family photos covering one entire wall. A large wooden table dominated the center of the room, scarred from decades of family meals and conversations. Catherine placed a plate in front of Sarah loaded with eggs, bacon, hash browns, and fresh biscuits. It was more food than Sarah usually ate in an entire day. She protested that it was too much, but Catherine insisted she needed to build up her strength. "A new mother needs proper nutrition," Catherine said firmly. "You've been running on empty for too long. I can see it in your face." As Sarah ate, Catherine entertained Emma with silly faces and baby talk. It was clear that Catherine missed having young children around. She had a natural way with Emma that reminded Sarah of her own mother, who had died in a car accident 2 years earlier. Sarah realized how much she missed having a mother figure in her life. "Tell me about your daughter," Sarah said between bites of the most delicious breakfast she had ever tasted. Catherine's face lit up immediately. "Jenny's studying veterinary medicine at Texas A&M. She's in her 3rd year, and she's absolutely brilliant. Always knew she wanted to work with animals, ever since she was little and started following Marcus around the ranch. She'll graduate next spring and come back to help run this place." The pride in Catherine's voice was unmistakable. Sarah felt a pang of longing, wondering if she would ever be able to provide that kind of stable, loving environment for Emma. Right now, she couldn't even provide a permanent address. "She sounds wonderful," Sarah said. "You must miss her terribly." "Every day," Catherine admitted. "But that's what you do as a parent. You raise them to be independent and strong, and then you let them go chase their dreams. Hardest thing in the world, but also the most important." Marcus returned as they were finishing breakfast, stomping his boots on the porch before entering the kitchen. He removed his cowboy hat and hung it on a peg by the door, revealing hair that was more gray than brown and a face tan from decades of outdoor work. "Morning, ladies," he said, accepting a cup of coffee from Catherine. "How'd you sleep, Sarah?" "Wonderfully, thank you. Any word on the roads?" Marcus's expression grew serious. "Well, I've got good news and bad news. The good news is that you and Emma are safe and sound. The bad news is that Highway 87 is completely washed out about 10 miles south of here. Bridge over Willow Creek took a beating, and there's no telling when it'll be safe for regular traffic." Sarah felt her heart sink. "How long before I can get through?" "State Highway Department says at least a week, maybe 2 if they find structural damage to the bridge. Even then, you'd need to get your car running first, and I took a look at it this morning on my way back. I'm afraid it's going to need more work than you probably want to put into it." The weight of her situation crashed down on Sarah again. She was stranded with no transportation, no money for repairs, and no way to get to Austin where her sister was expecting her. She felt Emma's weight in her arms and fought back the familiar feeling of panic. Catherine seemed to sense Sarah's distress immediately. "Now don't you worry about any of that," she said firmly. "You and Emma are welcome here as long as you need to stay. We've got plenty of room, and, frankly, it'll be nice to have some company." "I can't ask you to do that," Sarah protested. "You've already done so much, and I have no way to pay you back or help out. I'd just be another mouth to feed." Marcus exchanged a look with Catherine, one of those wordless conversations that long-married couples have perfected. Catherine nodded slightly, and Marcus turned back to Sarah. "As a matter of fact, you might be exactly what we need around here," Marcus said. "Catherine's been after me to hire someone to help with the books and the correspondence. Running a ranch this size generates a lot of paperwork, and I'm better with cattle than I am with computers." Sarah looked between them suspiciously. "Are you making up a job for me?" "Not at all," Catherine said quickly. "I've been handling the administrative side of things, but I'm also trying to expand our direct-to-consumer beef sales, and it's getting to be too much. We really could use someone with organizational skills." "I don't know anything about ranching," Sarah said. "You don't need to," Marcus replied. "Can you use a computer? Handle phone calls? Keep track of invoices and payments?" Sarah nodded slowly. Before Emma was born, she had worked as an administrative assistant at a small marketing firm. She had been good at it, too, until her boss decided that new mothers weren't reliable employees. "The pay wouldn't be much to start," Catherine added. "But it would include room and board for you and Emma. And there's a little apartment over the barn that we fixed up for Jenny when she was in high school and wanted more independence. It's got its own kitchen and everything." Sarah felt overwhelmed by their generosity. "Why are you doing this? You don't even know me." Marcus sat down across from her at the kitchen table, his weathered hands wrapped around his coffee mug. 30 years ago, I was a young man trying to make this ranch work after my father got sick. Catherine and I were newly married, and we were in over our heads financially. Old Mr. Henderson, who owned the spread next to ours, took a chance on us. Lent us money when the bank wouldn't, taught me things about ranching I never would have learned otherwise. Never asked for anything in return except that we passed the kindness along someday when we could. We've been blessed," Catherine added. "This ranch has been good to us, and Jenny turned out better than we ever dared hope. We've always talked about finding a way to help other families the way Mr. Henderson helped us." Sarah looked down at Emma, who was reaching for the colorful salt and pepper shakers on the table. Her daughter deserved stability and security, and these people were offering exactly that. But it seemed too good to be true. "What if I'm terrible at the job?" Sarah asked. "Then we'll figure something else out," Marcus said simply. "But I have a feeling you're going to do just fine. Takes strength and intelligence to get yourself and your baby out of a bad situation. Those are exactly the qualities we need around here." After breakfast, Catherine took Sarah on a tour of the ranch house and the apartment over the barn. The apartment was small but perfectly furnished, with a living area, kitchenette, bedroom, and bathroom. Large windows offered views of the pastures and hills, and everything was spotlessly clean. Jenny loved having her own place, Catherine explained as they looked around. She said it helped her learn to be independent while still being close enough to home for family dinners and laundry. The apartment felt like a palace to Sarah, who had been living in cramped, run-down places for months. Emma would have room to crawl and eventually walk. There was even a small yard area outside where a child could play safely. "If you decide to stay, you'd be welcome to join us for meals in the main house whenever you want," Catherine said. "But you'd also have the privacy to cook for yourself and Emma when you prefer." That afternoon, Marcus showed Sarah around the ranch office, which was located in a converted bedroom of the main house. Filing cabinets lined the walls, and a desk was covered with papers, invoices, and correspondence that clearly needed attention. "I'm afraid I've let things get a bit behind," Marcus admitted sheepishly. "Catherine usually handles this stuff, but she's been so busy with the direct sales program that it's gotten away from us." Sarah could see immediately what needed to be done. The papers needed to be sorted and filed, the computer files organized, and a system established for handling incoming orders and correspondence. It was exactly the kind of work she had done at her previous job, only this time she would be helping people who genuinely cared about her success. "I could set up a better filing system," Sarah said, already mentally organizing the chaos. "And maybe create a database for customer information that would make the direct sales easier to manage." Marcus grinned. "See? I told Catherine you were going to work out perfectly." That evening over dinner, Sarah made her decision. Emma had been fussy all day, but she calmed down immediately when Catherine held her. The baby seemed to know she was in a place where she would be loved and protected. "If you're sure about the job offer, I'd like to accept," Sarah said. "I can't promise how long I'll stay, but I'd like to try to make it work." "Wonderful," Catherine said, bouncing Emma gently on her knee. "We'll move your things to the apartment tomorrow, and you can start working whenever you feel ready." "There's just one thing," Sarah added hesitantly. "I need to call my sister and let her know I won't be coming to Austin after all. She was counting on me to help with her kids while she works." Marcus nodded understandingly. "Of course. Use the phone in the office whenever you need to. And if your sister ever wants to visit, she's welcome here anytime." Sarah called her sister Maria that evening and explained the situation. Maria was disappointed but understanding, especially when Sarah described the ranch and the job opportunity. "It sounds too good to be true," Maria said. "Are you sure these people are legitimate?" "I think so," Sarah replied. "They seem genuinely kind, and the job is real. I need to try to make this work, Maria. For Emma's sake." "Just be careful," Maria warned. "And call me every few days so I know you're okay." After the call, Sarah sat on the porch of the main house with Catherine and Marcus, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. Emma slept peacefully in Sarah's arms, and, for the first time in months, Sarah felt something she had almost forgotten: hope. "Thank you," she said quietly. "I know I keep saying that, but I don't know how else to express what this means to me." "No thanks necessary," Marcus replied. "We're looking forward to having you as part of the Triple W family." Catherine reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. "Sometimes the worst storms blow and the best changes," she said. "I have a feeling this is going to work out beautifully for all of us." As they sat there in comfortable silence, Sarah allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, she and Emma had found more than just temporary shelter. Maybe they had found a new beginning. The rain hammered against the windshield like angry fists as Sarah Martinez gripped the steering wheel tighter. Her 3-month-old daughter Emma slept peacefully in the car seat behind her, completely unaware of the chaos surrounding them. The storm had come out of nowhere, turning the rural Texas highway into a river of rushing water and debris. Sarah's hands shook as she tried to keep the old Honda on the road. The car had been making strange noises for weeks, but she couldn't afford to fix it. Not after her husband Jake had disappeared 3 months ago, leaving her with nothing but unpaid bills and a newborn baby. The divorce papers in her purse felt heavier than the storm clouds above. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the endless stretch of ranch land on both sides of the highway. Sarah had been driving for hours, trying to reach her sister's house in Austin, but the storm kept getting worse. The radio crackled with emergency warnings about flash floods and dangerous driving conditions. She should have stayed home, but staying meant facing the landlord who wanted 3 months of back rent she didn't have. The engine made a horrible grinding sound, followed by a series of violent shudders. Sarah pulled over to the shoulder just as steam began pouring from under the hood. The car died completely, leaving her and Emma stranded in the middle of nowhere with no cell phone service and night falling fast. "Please don't cry," Sarah whispered to Emma, who was starting to stir in her car seat. "Mama's going to figure this out." But, as she sat there watching the rain pour down, Sarah felt hopelessness creeping in. She had exactly $17 in her wallet, half a tank of gas in a car that wouldn't start, and a baby who would need feeding soon. The nearest town was at least 20 miles away, and she hadn't seen another car on this road for over an hour. The wind rocked the small Honda back and forth like a toy. Sarah tried her phone again, holding it up toward different windows, but there were no bars anywhere. She was completely cut off from the world. Emma began to fuss, her small cries barely audible over the storm. Sarah reached back to comfort her daughter, fighting back tears of her own. That's when she saw the headlights cutting through the rain. A large pickup truck slowed down and pulled over behind her car. Through the rain-streaked rear window, Sarah could see a tall figure getting out of the truck. Her heart raced with fear. She was alone with her baby in the middle of nowhere, and a stranger was approaching. Every news story about highway predators flashed through her mind. The man knocked gently on her window. He was wearing a cowboy hat that dripped water, and his face looked kind in the dim light from his truck's headlights. Sarah cracked the window just an inch. "You folks having car trouble?" he called over the storm. His voice carried a thick Texas drawl that somehow made her feel safer. "This ain't a good place to be stuck in weather like this." Sarah studied his face carefully. He appeared to be in his 40s, with weathered skin and genuine concern in his eyes. Something about his manner reminded her of her grandfather, who had always treated everyone with respect and kindness. "The engine just died," Sarah called back. "I think it overheated." "Well, you can't stay here," the cowboy said. "The creek about a mile up ahead tends to overflow in storms like this. This whole stretch of road could be underwater in an hour." Emma's cries grew louder, and Sarah felt panic rising in her chest. She had to make a decision quickly, but every option seemed dangerous. Stay in the car and risk flooding, or trust a complete stranger with her baby's life. The cowboy seemed to understand her hesitation. He stepped back from the car and raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Name's Marcus Webb," he said. "I own the W Ranch about 5 miles from here. I've got a landline you can use to call for help, and my wife Catherine makes the best hot soup in 3 counties. We can come back for your car when the storm passes." Something in his voice convinced Sarah that he was telling the truth. Maybe it was desperation, or maybe it was the way he mentioned his wife without Sarah asking. She made her choice. "Okay," she said, rolling down the window a bit more. "But I need to get my baby's things." Marcus nodded and returned to his truck to get a large umbrella. He held it over Sarah as she gathered Emma's diaper bag and the small suitcase that contained all their belongings. The rain soaked through their clothes instantly, but Marcus shielded Emma from the worst of it as Sarah secured the baby in her arms. The inside of Marcus's truck was warm and dry. It smelled like leather and coffee, and country music played softly on the radio. Emma stopped crying almost immediately, soothed by the steady rumble of the engine and the warmth. "You picked a hell of a night to be traveling," Marcus said as he pulled back onto the highway. "Where were you headed?" "Austin," Sarah replied, bouncing Emma gently. "To my sister's place. I was trying to get there before the storm hit, but I guess I didn't leave early enough." Marcus glanced at her in the rearview mirror. Sarah realized she probably looked terrible. Her long brown hair was soaked and tangled, her clothes were wrinkled from hours of driving, and she hadn't slept properly in days. She felt embarrassed about her appearance, but Marcus didn't seem to judge her. "Austin's a good 4 hours from here in good weather," Marcus said. "With these roads flooded, you wouldn't have made it tonight anyway. Good thing you broke down near civilization instead of out in the middle of nowhere." Sarah almost laughed. This felt pretty much like the middle of nowhere to her, but she supposed it could have been worse. At least someone had found them. The truck turned off the highway onto a dirt road that led through a gate marked W Ranch. Even in the storm, Sarah could see that this was a substantial operation. Fences stretched as far as the headlights could reach, and she caught glimpses of cattle huddled together under large trees. "How long have you lived here?" Sarah asked, trying to make conversation and calm her nerves. "Born and raised on this land," Marcus replied with obvious pride. "My daddy built this place from nothing, and I've been working it for over 20 years. Catherine and I took over when Dad retired 5 years ago. It's a good life, even when Mother Nature decides to throw a tantrum like tonight." The ranch house appeared through the rain like something from a movie. It was a large, single-story building with a wraparound porch and warm light glowing from every window. Smoke rose from the chimney, and Sarah could see the outline of rocking chairs on the porch. It looked like the kind of home she had always dreamed of having. Marcus parked as close to the front door as possible and once again shielded Sarah and Emma with the umbrella as they ran for shelter. The front door opened before they reached it, revealing a woman with kind eyes and graying hair pulled back in a ponytail. "Lord have mercy," the woman said, ushering them inside. "Marcus, you didn't tell me you were bringing guests." And, in this weather. Come in, honey, come in. You're soaked to the bone. This had to be Catherine, Marcus's wife. She immediately began fussing over Sarah and Emma, taking wet coats and guiding them toward the living room where a fire crackled in a large stone fireplace. Catherine, this is. Marcus paused, realizing he didn't know Sarah's name. Sarah Martinez, Sarah said quickly. And, this is Emma. Our car broke down on the highway. Well, you're safe now, Catherine said firmly. Marcus, get some dry clothes from Jenny's room. And, put on some coffee. This young lady looks like she hasn't had a proper meal in days. Catherine was right. Sarah had been surviving on whatever food she could afford, which wasn't much. The smell of something delicious cooking in the kitchen made her stomach growl loudly enough that everyone heard it. When did you eat last, honey? Catherine asked gently. Sarah felt her cheeks burn with embarrassment. Yesterday morning, I think. I had some crackers from a gas station. Catherine's expression grew stern, but not toward Sarah. She looked at her husband with the kind of look that married couples develop over decades together. Marcus nodded and headed toward the kitchen without being asked. You sit right here by the fire, Catherine told Sarah. I'm going to get you some dry clothes and warm up some stew. That baby of yours is beautiful. How old is she? 3 months, Sarah replied, settling into the most comfortable chair she had sat in for weeks. The warmth from the fire began to penetrate her wet clothes, and, for the first time in hours, she felt safe. Catherine returned with a soft sweatshirt and pants that looked like they belonged to a teenage girl. These were my daughter Jenny's, she explained. She's away at college now, but I think they'll fit you. There's a bathroom just down the hall where you can change. Sarah hesitated. She didn't want to leave Emma with strangers, no matter how kind they seemed. Catherine seemed to understand immediately. Bring the baby with you, she said. Or I can hold her while you change. Whatever makes you comfortable. Sarah decided to trust Catherine with Emma for the few minutes it would take to change clothes. As she walked toward the bathroom, she could hear Catherine cooing softly to the baby, and Emma seemed perfectly content. The bathroom was spotlessly clean and decorated with family photos. Sarah caught glimpses of Marcus and Catherine at various ages, along with a beautiful young woman who must be Jenny. Everyone looked happy and relaxed, the kind of family Sarah had always hoped to have someday. The dry clothes felt like luxury against her skin. They were simple and well-worn, but they were clean and warm. Sarah finger-combed her damp hair and tried to make herself look presentable. When she returned to the living room, she found Catherine feeding Emma a bottle. I hope you don't mind, Catherine said. She seemed hungry, and I still had some formula from when my sister visits with her grandkids. Is this okay? Sarah nodded gratefully. She had been worried about having enough formula for Emma, and Catherine's thoughtfulness brought tears to her eyes. Everything about this family seemed too good to be true. Marcus returned from the kitchen carrying a tray with 3 steaming bowls of beef stew and thick slices of homemade bread. The smell made Sarah's mouth water instantly. She realized she was starving, not just for food but for the kind of warmth and kindness these people were showing her. So what's your story, Sarah? Catherine asked as they ate. Her tone was gentle, not prying, but genuinely interested. What brings you and Emma out in a storm like this? Sarah wasn't sure how much to share. These people had already done so much for her, and she didn't want to burden them with her problems. But something about Catherine's kind eyes made her feel like she could be honest. I'm running away, I guess, Sarah admitted quietly. My husband left when Emma was born. He couldn't handle being a father, and he cleaned out our bank account when he left. I've been trying to make it on my own, but everything went wrong at once. Lost my job, couldn't pay rent, car started breaking down. My sister said I could stay with her in Austin until I get back on my feet. Catherine reached over and squeezed Sarah's hand. Honey, that's not running away. That's being smart enough to ask for help when you need it. There's nothing wrong with that. Marcus nodded in agreement. Takes courage to start over with a baby.
Lot of folks would have given up by now.
Sarah felt tears threatening again. She had been telling herself she was weak for needing help, for not being able to handle everything on her own. Hearing these strangers say she was being brave changed something inside her. "The storm's supposed to last through tomorrow," Marcus said, glancing toward the window where rain continued to pound against the glass. "Roads will be flooded for at least a day or two after that. You're welcome to stay here until it's safe to travel."
Sarah started to protest. "I can't impose on you like that. You've already done so much." "Nonsense," Catherine said firmly.
"We've got plenty of room, and it's no trouble at all.
Besides, it'll be nice to have a baby in the house again. This place has been too quiet since Jenny left for school."
The kindness of these strangers overwhelmed Sarah. She had been so used to people looking at her with judgment or pity. Her landlord saw her as a problem to be solved. Her former boss had treated her like she was disposable. Even some family members had acted like her situation was somehow her fault. But Marcus and Catherine were treating her like a welcome guest, not a burden.
"I don't know how to thank you," Sarah said.
"No thanks needed," Marcus replied.
"This is what neighbors do.
Besides, Catherine loves having someone to cook for. You'd actually be doing us a favor by sticking around." After dinner, Catherine showed Sarah to a guest bedroom that was decorated in cheerful yellow and white. There was a crib in the corner that Catherine explained had been Jenny's when she was a baby. "I never could bring myself to get rid of it," Catherine admitted. "I kept thinking maybe someday we'd have grandchildren, and now it comes in handy after all." Sarah settled Emma into the crib while Catherine found extra blankets and pillows. The baby fell asleep immediately, exhausted from the day's adventures. Sarah stood watching her daughter sleep, feeling a mix of gratitude and disbelief at their good fortune. "She's going to be just fine," Catherine said softly from the doorway.
"And so are you."
Sometimes the worst storms bring the best surprises. As Sarah prepared for bed in the most comfortable room she had seen in months, she could hear the storm continuing to rage outside. But, inside the ranch house, she felt safer than she had in a very long time. She fell asleep to the sound of rain on the roof and the distant lowing of cattle, with Emma sleeping peacefully nearby. Outside, the storm continued its assault on the Texas countryside, washing out roads and flooding creeks. But Sarah Martinez and her baby daughter were safe, warm, and fed, thanks to the kindness of strangers who had become temporary angels in their time of greatest need. The next morning would bring new challenges and difficult decisions, but, for now, they were exactly where they needed to be.